Hello and welcome to another recap of the IndieNetwork, a monthly online chat for authors and self-publishers. This month we talked about cover design, how to get it right, how important it is, and how to work with professional cover designers. That's why we had professional cover designer Mark Ecob on the show. Mark has worked with the likes of authors such as Iain Banks and major publishing houses such as Orion, Harper Collins and Bloomsbury. We were also going to have John Bond, the co-founder of services provider White Fox, on the show, but unfortunately due to technical issues he couldn't join us. However, he will be back in future Indie Networks. So without any further ado, let's kick off with Mark talking about how he got into the industry and what he's been up to for the last 10 years.
Work for myself, first of all. I run a little company called Ecob Design Limited. Having spent 10 years in industry, I set up on my own in 2010 after leaving Canongate Books as their art director. Since then, I have kind of just opened the door to see who needs the cover, really, and luckily have been able to land a really good client list varying from independents, when independents weren't cool and when, you know, people weren't making money out of it, all the way up to the likes of Amazon through the Independent Alliance of Small Publishers. I'm also art director for Unbound, which is a crowdsourced publisher here in the UK. And I'm also art director for Clay Self-Publishing, which is the self-publishing arm of Clay's the printer, which go by St. Ives as well, if you... Yeah. So yeah, I basically draw pictures from a living from my little home studio with my partner, and spend some time in London every week seeing clients. Yes, that's my life. It's pictures and kids.
Sounds fun.
I'm very lucky. It's one of the best jobs in the world, I think.
Excellent, cool stuff. So, I mean, we're going to just, I've just had an email from John just very quickly, he, again, is just having a couple of technical troubles logging in, but as soon as he does, we'll get him on and we'll open up.
I have to take the mick out of him when he's in. We're going to have to take the mick out of him when he signs in. Okay.
Just a little bit, why not?
A little bit.
Yeah, cool stuff. Well, just making sure that he can get in, just working that in the background. So forgive me if you see me clicking around places.
Yeah, not at all. Okay.
Cool stuff. So yeah, again, feel free to ask questions in the background. You know, people that are tuning in and listening to myself and Mark tonight. We will take questions whenever we can, so don't feel you have to wait for anything. Ask away. But yeah. I'm going to start off with my first point, my first question, which is, see, I know I think, but I'll ask you, do you think self-publishers have a reputation for poor book covers?
I think they did, but it's changing. There's a big why to it, which we can dissect maybe later. But yeah, I think basically because indies don't necessarily apply the the professionalism needed. A lot of people do it themselves. A lot of people design it in Word. A lot of people throw a picture that they've taken with their phone on the front of a book.
Yeah, I've seen that times.
The trouble with all this, all the kind of open, you know, everyone can buy a copy of Photoshop. Everyone can put some type on an image, but not everybody can do it well. And book cover work has its own sensibilities. It has. I mean, I've been doing it God knows how many years now, and I still haven't got it right.
Yeah.
Still learning. So, you know, it's I'd say we're definitely on the up, because savvy self-publishers like yourself are applying the right sort of budget and the right experienced people to it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And that's something that I was going to say, essentially, and that's sort of my outlook on it, is that we have sort of turned the tide around. I think the people who are not reaching out to those traditional standards, because the publishers have spent a lot of time making sure, you know, they're putting out the best possible product that they can be. So we have, I think consumers naturally have that expectation level. So yeah, I think the self-publishers who are not quite getting there, I think they're soon finding themselves at the bottom of the Amazon pile or the Kobo pile or what have you. So yeah,
I mean, it's unfortunate that it isn't so much of a level. I mean, you could argue that with the technology, it is a level playing field. But these houses, as I still call them, have years of experience about their audience, acquiring books, right cover, how to get to a right cover, and you know, even the most savviest of self-publishers who make, you know, good livings out of what they're doing, yourself included, can't be a one-person publishing house, you know. But you can find people that can help, And for me, there is a little bit of a gap between the resource that the sort of big publishers allow to a cover and sort of indies, but it is closing. I mean, there wouldn't be platforms like White Fox, assuming John can join us anytime soon.
So I keep watching them.
Yeah. Reedsy, or the self-publishing arm of Clay's, the printer. I mean, 5 years ago they would have never thought of it. It's got to be viable, and their numbers are brilliant. People are spending money on cover design in the indie arena, so it's a good changing landscape, I would say.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I think as well, for professionals as well as authors, I think everyone seems to have. It sounds, I don't mean this term in a bad way whatsoever, but crawled out the woodwork. We've all just sort of gone, hello, what can we do, and let's interact with each other, and how can this company work with this company? I think we definitely have, since the digital revolution, 5 to sort of 10 years ago now. I think we've just seen that switch, like you're talking about. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of, obviously, we've said that we've talked a little bit about why it's important to have a good cover, and without it, you will be left behind by the people who are spending money on cover design. I mean, how important is it really? I mean, if we're going to drill down in general, how important is the cover design to success? Because I always hold it as the first point of contact. It's the most important. But I mean, what would you say?
Asking a cover design, that's like asking a chicken how important eggs are. But, I'd say very, very important. You have to have something on the front, because of the correlation between the traditional media and the fact we use a thumbnail as a book cover. There's even though our kids will grow up swiping television screens, it's the idea of a cover needs to exist at some point. It has to. Something has to have a face. But why it's so important? I mean, I always sort of go back to a well-worn cliche of mine, which is like a good cover is like putting the right costume on an actor before they go on stage. It can help the book appeal to the right audience, and it can help them sort of speak in a clear and confident manner. I mean, people will get very deep about cover design being, the right taster to the interior, the right gateway, the right kind of hors d'oeuvre. It's a taster. It's a summary of the book sold that will entice you to purchase or delve in, and that is our function. That and the blurb and the marketing. I mean, of course, it's part of a broader publishing strategy. I'm not, for instance, saying that a cover will do all of those things for you, but it's certainly high up on my list.
Great. I mean, I would echo that, and I'm glad you say it. That's why I'm asking. It's sort of a leading question.
It can't not be important.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's why, it's just great to hear it from a designer's perspective. But I think, to me, I'm the sort of person that, I'm very aware that the subconscious decision of whether someone likes artwork is done like that. Even before we can read the text on the front cover, you've already made a decision on the colors, on the font face, on the typeface, even just the sort of indicated genre, which I think is an important point from my perspective as a book buyer. So I think, I mean, that's why I always say it's the most important thing. It's that first contact. As you said, people will be swiping across, and if you see something in that model that's going across that catches your eye, that's the battle, isn't it? So I completely agree. I think it's interesting because we actually had I've just received a question via email, which is really, really nice. So that's good. And I think someone just might have seen the posts I've been sending out today and dropped me a line to ask this question. So that's absolutely great. But I think it just feeds in now. And we'll just come back to the question that Kriska Fiction has asked in the sidebar in a second. In terms of this is quite an interesting point. They've asked basically, should you try and be true to the genre, or try and break a mold? Now, obviously, talking briefly about what we just touched on, should a cover indicate a genre so much that it's, for instance, fantasy, 80s fantasy, that sort of genre of fantasy, and at that time you could have wandered into a shop and just seen all the fantasy titles. And it's quite true today with the fantasy genre still, with sci-fi, and that sort of commercial genre fiction. So I think the reason I see this being an interesting question is, should you try and indicate that so someone feels at home with you, or should you try and break the mold and be completely different?
That's a good question. It's kind of the $64,000 one. I would say that it is a publishing strategy question, what you do with your cover. I mean, largely independent authors have a goldfish bowl of a market, really. Some people build success over time, and the likes of Mark Dawson, etc., will have a certain look that fits into a genre, and that's great, and they will, you know, reach more and more people for it, albeit you know, fostering a very personal kind of following. But when to buck the trend? I mean, I would say indies by and large should take notice of what's out there and do something as individual within that as possible. Because a lot of them are genre pieces. A lot of them defy genre. I mean, it's a bit of both, really, I'd say, Ben. There's no blanket rule.
That's good.
You could also argue that as an indie, you've got all the freedom in the world to kind of, you know, make mistakes or not, or blaze a trail. You know, a bigger question for me is whether every indie sort of hopes to be picked up one day by a house or a small press, which possibly they do, possibly they, you know, don't they want to handle it all themselves. But you know, some people do covers for attention. Some people just do it quickly. I mean, it's. I would say to nod to what's out there is definitely a good thing.
At least have a flavour then. So
yeah, because you can alienate audiences quicker than you can obtain.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, that's probably what I'd say that's what I tried to do personally with my own front cover, is sort of break outside that mold of epic fantasy that we've seen, you know, so many amazing artworks of over the years. But I tried to step away from that, and it kind of worked reasonably well. So, you know, hopefully that's going to continue to work for me.
Going to follow on, Ben, I'm doing a fantasy brief at the moment, and whilst with every brief, I always sort of cross-section of ideas and stuff that might push the mold, some stuff that might follow, just so you can get that pitch. It links to your previous question. I think that a designer's role is also to show an author or an editor or whoever's asking you to do the cover that pitch, you know, to show them what they don't want, show them what they do, and maybe aim in the middle. But the author I'm working for is going squarely for the fantasy formula. And we're spending lots of money on getting it done professionally and beautifully using an illustrator, spending lots of time on the typography just to get this thing as good a genre piece as it can be. And I started off going, no, we're going to do something different. We're going to go graphic. We're going to go this and that and the other. But the author's kind of clear vision of what they want has made me come right back to zero again. And that was the right choice. So there's a meeting of mine for you. So if that helps.
No, I think that's brilliant. That's really good to hear in sort of practice, and that's why it's great to have you on tonight. Is that it's amazing to actually hear from someone who is a cover designer. Normally it's, you know, authors talking about their books, talking about how they not negotiated, but worked with cover designers. So normally we're slightly removed in these sorts of chats. So it's really good to have you on. Just quickly, want to go to the sidebar. So we've got Kriska Fiction, who's kindly asked whether we could critique her debut novel cover here and now. I think probably it worked better if we have time. We can come to that later. But I think, you know, if you'd like to tweet us or Facebook us or email us or send us a pigeon afterwards, I'd be happy to look at it. Mark, if you...
Yeah, no worries.
Excellent.
Fun.
We'll drop
have a quick look while we're looking.
Excellent. Sure. We're going to drop in all our Twitter and emails and all sorts of web handles in at the end of the show anyway, so you can pick them up there. But yeah, I mean, cover design for me, I mean, I'm not a designer. You should have seen the brief that I gave my first designer 5 years ago. It was literally scribbled on the back of a napkin. And I'd taken a picture of it and sort of tried to fluff it up with some words and some really nice concepts. But I mean, it can be so difficult to really get that across just from, you know, what you've got in your mind and what you want to see that a cover designer actually produces. So, I mean, let's say that, you know, we are going with a professional. You know, we've realized that we can't do it themselves like I did. How would you start creating that concept with a professional cover designer like yourself in mind? So, you know, how would you make sure you're laying the groundwork for an easy sort of transition and a cover designer understanding what you want to do? How would you go about that?
Well, I can tell you how I do it, which might be good, because I don't know how other people do it. I've written my own briefing form that is tailored for independents.
Amazing.
And what I've done over the last couple of years is to hone that with the more savvy kind of perhaps with design experience authors that I've been working with. I've asked them for their sort of feedback. And is it too simple? Is it too this? Is it too that? And it's always improving, but it's a nice little form for us to get the basics down. I mean, some people don't know how big their book is going to be. Some people don't know about territory. Some people don't know about production value. You know, all the basic stuff you can do with really, really easily. I mean, I stopped short of producing like a frequently asked questions sheet or anything. Be like teaching grandma to suck eggs, but I work with every client with a brief that I've tailored for me.
Amazing.
And so I get them to fill it in, and then we talk about it on the phone very soon afterwards. Usually after I've read the book. So we'll sit there and interrogate the thing, and talk about the ins and outs of it, and try and distill or boil down exactly what their vision for it is, if they have one. If they don't, I can provide one. And I then sort of swoop in with the practical side, tell them how much have they got to spend, where can we aim, here's something I've done that might inform this, you know, give them a lay of the land. Because if we go squarely for an airy fairy concept that can't be achieved in the time or with the money, you know, they'll get in a hissy fit, let alone.
Of course.
So yeah, it's all about working with them, really, getting information, really pressing them to try and be objective about the cover, because some are so blinkered that they can't even, you know, think about the right genre or what a hierarchy is on the front cover and what should go first. So yeah, brief it properly, I would say. Be objective about it and let the designer do their job.
I think that's good, because I mean, you will find that, you know, with a professional as well. If you're just working with a mate or a guy you've sort of known through a friend who isn't really a cover designer, might just do a dabble on the, you know, on the side, you can quickly think, you know, you should quickly see rather that if you haven't got these steps in place and you're not quite sure what's happening, at the same time as they're not sure what's quite happening, you can see you're not really having that professional relationship. So that's why, you know, I think you're a great example of a cover designer who knows how to work with authors. And that an author should be reaching out to as well, because, you know, like you said, when I first started out, you know, we have no idea really what we're doing until you publish that, you know, that first book. You actually go through the process. It's very, very difficult to sort of see the whole thing in your mind and knowing, you know, which aspects come after which. So I think having a cover designer like yourself and go, cool, give me your rough ideas, fill this form out, and then, you know, you go away and that's where you do the content.
It's our job to make it easy for you. I mean, it's you're paying us to provide a service. You know? I mean, it's I seen 2 points to make. The whole indie revolution, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I'm not into labeling stuff. Is a complete uprising. Is a completely kind of, it's a chameleon-like evolving animal over time. And I'm learning loads by working with all sorts of different people. Lots of crazies, lots of normals, you know, a real spectrum of people here and largely in the US.
Yeah,
and you really have to roll with the punches. It's as simple as that. And get this vision out of them. You know,
that's cool. Good stuff. I mean, yeah, that should give you a perfect example for any authors listening in, any writers who are either, you know, publishing on the cusp of publishing a first book. You might just put the final dot on the final page and be thinking, what now? Or maybe you might be a couple of books in. You know, this is the sort of cover designer and the sort of process you should be expecting, or should be looking for rather, and also be expecting from that cover designer. So hopefully this will give you a couple of ideas for what to look for when you're reaching out for your professionals or new professionals. Who knows? So in terms of, I mean,
may I make one more point?
Oh, of course. Sorry, yeah, I forgot you had to say
the last one. This changing landscape thing. I always encourage indies to own the process. I mean, the ones that think a magic fairy is going to come along and produce a beautiful book for them just because they throw money at Ingrid Spark is, I think, is fairly narrow-minded. If they come to the table of it, take ownership of the process, but then allow the right professionals to come in where they're needed. I think that is the perfect balance, because if they're completely passive, or they completely know what's, you know, they try and know what's going on and they're too in your face. Yeah, the balance of that is quite delicate, I would say. And the right designer will, you know, be a good sounding board and push back where needed and let you come forward where it's needed. You know, it's as much about design and coming up with ideas as it is managing the person.
I think that's good. Yeah, so I think, yeah, taking it from that then, yeah, absolutely have this back and forth, but not too much and not too standoffish. You need a good working relationship, which is give and take, and it should have a lot of communication, be quite transparent. I always find that's, you know, designers that I've worked with and professionals in general that I've worked with over the last couple of years, the best ones and the ones I'm always recommending and going, oh, you have to work with this person, you know, are the ones that have been that sort of relationship.
very, very easygoing, very open, which I think is brilliant. So yeah, again, the takeaway from that is absolutely find that sort of professional that you can work with on that level. Cool. So I mean, in terms of, let's say that I'm an author, and I'm an author, so I'm a brand new author, and I'm just coming at this from essentially day one, okay, and I know I need a cover. If I'm sort of going about your process, whereby I would get in touch with you and you would say, do you have a concept or something like that, and you fill out that form. Let's say I've gone with someone who hasn't got that sort of sophisticated form system where you can guide them all through it and get an idea in your head of what they want. How should we build up that brief, that concept? How should we get in our minds a few things that can lead a designer forwards? Should we be looking in bookshops? Should we be looking online, DeviantArt, that sort of thing?
I can't nod any deeper than that. I think getting out into a bookshop is looking on your own shelves, throwing images at a designer, creating a mood sheet is a good idea. Even if it's just a folder on your computer,
that's cool.
Filled with stuff that you find inspiring.
Yeah.
Be it a poster or a picture that your kid's done. I would throw it all at the designer, and they will sort of be that sponge and the filter to sort of get what you need. So yeah, start just sharing and talking would be step one, and then a designer will be able to sort of eke out what you're saying, and perhaps bring in an industry example or a previous cover or something they've already done or something that they really want to try. Sometimes a brief comes to me where we don't need to fill in a form, but I've got the perfect thing that I've been playing with myself that I can just go this, and they'll go yes. The ideas that just instinctively come and hit and are just like the ones that are hard work, and you go, but this thriller type needs to go that far along and change the texture. It's so the ones that aren't so enjoyable.
Brilliant. I'm a little bit of this.
Yeah. We secretly love it, but don't ever stop.
If I'm doing it.
It can be, but it swings and roundabouts. You have to both let the author spread their wings, but you also have to keep it in a practical box. We'll talk about money later, but there are structures to how these jobs go, and there are extensions you can make, and there are you can even shorten them if you've got it right in the first round. So it's it's every single one is what I find most intriguing about working with indies is that every single one is different. And every person is different that comes with it. It's fascinating, and it's fascinating and annoying in the most equal measure.
I get the same thing. Across the world, and brilliant to just of people that you get, the difference in difference in the books as well, and even just the actual products that people are coming to me with and saying, I want to do this non-fiction book about cheeses. I want to do, this children's book about, a lucky sock. It's brilliant. It's really, really fun. So I can see where you're coming from that. Cool. You mentioned cost there, and I think it's probably wise to start moving on to more of the process around it. So, from here, we've obviously, gone onto the bookshops, gone onto online, places like Google Images to find things that inspire us. We've got that folder on our computer where we can give that to a designer. From that process then, when designers sort of got all the information that you need, moving forward, again, I know it can be completely different depending on the project, but do you have sort of a rough sort of time scale that you could give us, an estimation roughly?
Yeah, sure. I always say a month if you can, because and even longer if you can stretch it. It can be done in hours. If I get the right brief, then give me it at 9 a.m. and we'll do it by lunchtime. But it's I highly wouldn't recommend that, by the way.
That's a quick turnaround time.
The act of designing, I think, is actually the easy part. It's the messing about with the brief and getting the author on side and them sleeping on it. I always, when I deliver roughs, and again, it's very, very basic. I say, take overnight, show it to your family, throw it up online to a closed group if you can, and share it and sleep on it, because it's that initial knee-jerk reaction isn't always the right one.
No, I've had the same thing with covers in the past, you know, with finding, yeah, something's just come through last minute, and I've sort of gone, well, I don't know if that's right, and then and then taking it aside, taking a gamble, and then ended up loving it, and couldn't actually believe that I would have gone with something else over it. So I think, you know, that sort of thing, that viewpoint will change over, a night, over weeks, months, years, what have you. So I think, it's a very, very important point.
You have to build that time in. I mean, to get the right brief. I mean, I been working with an independent recently where we've rebriefed the thing 3 times before actually starting,
Wow.
because I'll be able to see visually if there's a conflict between something like a strapline and a title. If there's too many things to fit in, I will say so immediately. And advise that they change it. I mean, if they still want to push through with it, of course, it's their book. But if there's a conflict, or it just shows how much time is taken in the process by thinking about it, or the run up, or the artworking. I mean, when I was in house as a designer, I was ever frustrated by the amount of changes I would have to do for editors. Used to think they were the enemy, but actually they still are in a little bit of a way. They use the rounds of roughs that you have for artworking to visualize the copy, just like I visualize the design. They see it in situ, they see if it's going to work. They then, tweak it a little bit to get it absolutely right. It's not just all about doing a job to a structure. It's about getting it right. And yes, it might be the 50th round, but it's essential to getting the thing right. Have a little bellyache by all means, but do it because it's the right thing. Lots of time, I would say, Ben. So I'll shut up now. So.
No, you're absolutely fine. I think, I think that month is useful, though, that you said, which is, I think, can be shortened down to a couple of weeks or 2 months, depending on the size of the project. There are some authors that will only need an ebook cover, and of course, if they want the ebook and the paperback, that extra bit of art around the side and the back of the book will take a little bit of extra time. Again, mostly with the edits and the planning. So I think that's important. That should be a good gauge for people sort of planning out their publishing processes and their calendars and figuring out where they can put cover design. So do you think, because this is always an interesting point, just to go back to the process of it, if an author comes to you and they haven't gone through the editing or typesetting stages at the moment, so they're not quite sure whether they know the final spine width, is it annoying for a designer to sort of get an email a month or two, after completing the design?
Absolutely, but it's like trying to run through rain. I mean, the chances of you getting a spine on time are minimal. So, I have a client who will remain nameless, but I do artwork under the assumption that the spine is going to change 3 or 4 times. Changes in paper, changes in,
of course, the
last minute, because it's all around cost. It would be amazing if you had the right blurb on time, the right spine on time, all that kind of stuff. It's just unlikely, and it's not realistic. So ones at the last minute, not ideal, but do it, get it right.
So would you say to the authors listening, and obviously going to be watching this later on the recording, would you say to authors, ideally get everything in, at the start? We're talking the fully edited blurb, title, everything, get it in at the start.
I mean, this brief that I put out has a section called the basics at the start. It's like, what are you publishing? Where are you publishing it? What's it called? What do you want to all these really simple questions that actually I didn't know I had to credit an illustrator on a children's book, or I didn't know about a series line. My 30-word quote won't fit. Do you know what I mean? It's,
wonder why. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So I think that so that should give the authors, listening, a decent understanding of what to have, because I've done that in the past, and at least I've done it, and I'll hold my hands up and say I've flagged that I will not know the actual spine width until X date or Y date, whatever.
And you know what? If a designer will kind of throw their toys out of the pram about spine width, you're probably working with the wrong one.
Luckily, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm good with that. Let's talk about those elements then in general, because I know you've obviously got your list, so you can give us a good sort of insight. I would say you've got obviously the title, if you've got any blurb for the front cover, the author name, the blurb for the back cover, and I would say spine width and barcode. Those to me would be the general, in most situations, the general sort of 5 or 6 things you'd need. Is there anything else we should add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Things like a deadline structure. When do you want it done by? Is there a deadline split? So do you want to, what we would call sell in with a high-res front first and then do the back and spine later on flaps. A rough budget. I mean, with the briefing form I send out, I send a price list too, and it's been engineered over time to fit the right pocket. I mean, you can extend or go down the scale. I think I've got to a point now where the pricing reflects most people's pockets. It's a thoroughly interesting process, to be honest with you. And out with the creative stuff, how big the book is.
Yeah.
Where you want to sell it is huge as well. I mean, most authors don't know about licensing or exclusivity on images. And when I say this beautiful picture of a female fiction will cost you £600 for an exclusive worldwide, yours forever license, they sort of ruffle their feathers and go, well, why can't I just have a Google image for nothing and it will be mine forever? It's the stuff that the professionals do and know about. They'll be able to show you the pitfalls. So do you want to go into the creative stuff on a brief, or do you want to just do
we've already sort of covered the concept and where to find art and things like that. I mean, just sort of the point where you're ready, and a couple of things you need to gather up just to make the cover design or your life slightly easier, but also the process slightly smoother.
A lot of sort of, I've got the luxury of being able to compare indie clients with very, very detailed briefs from large conglomerates and big publishing houses who have spent years honing theirs. A lot of people do sort of a little context box, what they want the book to do, and they will talk about the author, where they are in their career, what platform they have, what kind of following they have, for their audience, who are you selling it to, where will they consume the book, what else do they read, what do they watch, audience demographic, age, that kind of stuff. As for the kind of, the stuff I look for is what we would call in the trade the MacGuffin, which is like the one point or the one line which will summarise what somebody wants for a brief.
Exactly.
And it could be something ridiculous like Star Wars meets Homer Simpson or something like that. It could be literally just throwing stuff into a phrase that will go, and I'll go, yes. A synopsis is a good idea, a very detailed one if the fee is too low for someone to read the book. Because, if I'm doing a very low fee job, sometimes I won't read the thing because I can spend as much time designing the thing as I can engaging with it. So a synopsis is a good idea. Questions like, why is your book different? Pitch it to us, as if you were doing an elevator pitch to the publisher of your dreams. You could tell them quickly what it is and why it's great.
That's cool.
And most importantly is that mood board I talked about, I would say. Throwing in images, why you like them, pointing out what it is that you like. Because the type on something might not speak to you in the same way the atmosphere of the image might.
No.
So it's, again, I don't think you can have enough information. So in a brief, I'd rather have a longer one than a shorter one, to be honest with you. Brief.
I think that's all brilliant advice, Essentially, the takeaway from that being provide as much information as possible. That will obviously help the designer rather than just not as much information possible that doesn't help. Don't just send senseless random pieces of information.
A lot of people just paste in the blurb to a brief and go, there you go, brilliant. They would talk about a main character and I won't know what sort of hair colour they have.
No, of course.
Or, character descriptions, there's another basic one for you. If it's a genre piece, if it's a female fiction piece, for instance, and you're visualising the character, tell me what they look like,
Yeah, you can't just obviously go out and find a random image because then that would waste the first proof. You come back with this sort of, a brunette or something, or someone with, who knows? And then they go, that's absolutely wrong.
So, and it's up to me to get the right information, but that's out before we start. So.
Of course. So let's talk about cost then.
Is he around?
Sorry, what was that, Mark?
Is John around or?
No, I don't think he's managed to sign in, unfortunately. So I think we'll just carry on. I think we've got another 10 or 15 minutes of tonight's chat anyway. So I think what I want to do is, if it's all right with you, just cram in things about cost, and we'll answer a couple more questions that have come in over the internets while we've been chatting. In fact, just go back to one now. In fact, if you guys listening in, if you want to ask any questions in the last sort of 15 minutes that we've got here, feel free. We've got a couple in on Twitter. In fact, let's go for one now from GR Jordan. Do you think that a lot of covers, both indie and traditional, are becoming the same and not stretching new ground? Very interesting question.
Absolutely, but that's okay. I think there is a place for both beautiful literary trailblazing design,
Mhm.
and there's a place for beach reads that look very much like the other. I mean, it entirely the consumer base out there want to read both. You know, they want to do an exclusive experience of a book where they enjoy the production value and the physical object, as well as something that they might download quickly on a Kindle alongside 15 other crime films and take away with them on a week's holiday to the beach. So
Exactly.
I think this person is right that a lot of things do look the same. But there's a reason for that, and a good reason for that, and that reason props up half of the economic side of our business.
I was going to say,
so genre work is all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we talked about a lot about you know, sci-fi and fantasy and things like that. I mean, because me, of course, being a fantasy author, I always tend to go to that as my instant genre. But I think, you know, it's, as you said, it's the commercial side of it. And I think humans, from a psychological perspective, we are decision engines, or in a way, you know, we're comparison engines. We'll look at something and go, is that similar to what I enjoyed before? It looks like it is. Okay, therefore I might enjoy it the same as I did the last thing. And it's the reason, you know, I go to Subway and order the same damn sandwich every single time I go to Subway, no matter, you know, whether it's in America or England or wherever I come across one. And it's because I've had it before and I enjoy it.
We like what we like, you know, and it's trends are there for a reason. You know, a female dominance in the book buying market still is. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's that said, it's up to designers and you know, publishers of all sort of levels to push the envelope where they can. I mean, within genre work, take a step left. You know, do something new.
Yeah.
You can still nod back to the identifiers that make your book sort of link to the next door. You know,
I completely agree. Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it? But I think, it's I'm always, you know, looking again to the fantasy genre, but that's a real place where you can kind of go crazy, and you're almost applauded for the most amazing sort of fantastical, you know, otherworldly artwork that you can come up with, or the darkest looking character you can possibly come up with, or the most ethereal thing, you know. So you're almost applauded for taking a chance and doing something, but it is still indicated as fantasy through, you know, little bits of the font.
They're very basic identifiers, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, a good designer will be able to throw out, or an illustrator who's doing even more sort of defined sort of fantasy. Will be able to throw you a selection of ideas, whatever you've agreed, 2 or 3, or even more. I mean, I usually agree at least 3 ideas with every, and it can go up to, you know, the teens.
Brilliant.
Or even if I get carried away, that's me. But those ideas should take in a breadth of what's safe, what's not, and what's really kind of crazy. There's even the most savvy. I mean, you're a very experienced indie by the look of things. I mean, I've only really sort of looked at your book since we've been chatting this last week. But you know what you want, but you're also not a designer. You won't be able to see this left field idea from somebody, and it's up to the author to be kind of and sort of be open to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because and at least consider it. By all means, bat it out the park to say it's wrong. At least it will inform why the genre idea that follows everybody else is a good thing. You know?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Okay, you mentioned something very, very interesting. I think we'll just shelve that for a second. I want to come back to it. We were going to talk about costs. So could you, as you gave us sort of a rough ballpark of timescale, do the same with costs?
I mean, I work for Clays, the self-publishing arm of Clays, the big book printer. Aside from them, fees vary. Through them, mainly because it had to be done, and they wanted to sort of advertise a fee structure.
Yeah.
We came up with you know, a tiered system that should suit every pocket. And I couldn't come up with a better idea than sort of bronze, silver, and gold. Really, really good. But the one at the bottom we call a cover rescue, and for 150 quid you can get a facelift, basically. If you've got a working cover, something you've designed yourself, or a mate's done it in InDesign, or you know, someone's put these basic building blocks together, I will take it in and I'll go bang, 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 and make it clear, get it ready for print, treat the resolution, all that kind of stuff to make it market ready. That limits creative side. I sometimes have to bite my tongue and say there's a ceiling to the creative, you know, because covers that come in can sometimes be shocking. And if they're so passionate about it and they want to keep that picture their mum's done on the front, and they're only selling it to their mum, just go with it.
You have to. Some
at
people
that point, kind of goes up. Yeah, exactly. And that's very indicative of indies as well. Some people take a broader view; they take it as a full-time job and they make a career of it, and compete with the big guys. Some people just do a very sort of small print run that might be for a charity or something like that.
Exactly.
So it's how we work, what we charge has to change for varying pockets and varying requirements. So from 150 quid, it goes through tiers depending on what you want to spend, all the way up to thousands, including photos, illustrators, and production value to sort of knock your socks off. But I would say the average fee is kind of 500 quid around there, and that gets you an industry standard response, really.
Pretty much what I'd recommend to my clients. I think obviously working for the US, it can sort of translate into roughly the same in dollars, or at least roughly around the conversion rate. Dollars and pounds are not that close anymore, as I found out a couple of months ago. No, absolutely not. But obviously, I think that's a really, really good. I think that's a really, really good ballpark figure for the authors listening. Obviously, you need to do an element of budgeting as you go through this and go, it's not only the time, it's how much you're going to spend on it. So I think it's useful always to hear rough ballparks of any figures that we can get.
Just to follow on from the money, I mean, we offer somewhere between a cover rescue and your sort of standard industry rate, at 350, where you only get a couple of ideas and you get maybe one or two chances to change it, job done. It's very much an off-the-shelf affair. But it's if you want to, then if I found an image that might cost £300, throw that £300 in if you want to sell one of your children. But it's a huge expense for most independent authors who are financing themselves. And another thing I found fascinating across my client base is that larger publishers, this is going to sound fairly cavalier, it's a bit of a generalization, but they're not so worried about cash because since time began, they've been spending £1,000 on a cover. Whereas £1,000 for you or me financing themselves, outside of a day job, is your savings for the year. I mean,
a lot of money.
So it's up to us to respect that, and which is why the practical is so important. If I don't ask when you need it and how much you want to spend, and we go down the road and the fee is spent, and I send you an invoice for £1,500, it's sort of on this big beautiful book, and you can't afford it. What's the point?
No, of course. I think that, you have to spend the money to a certain point, but like I said, you do have to budget. This is why these sorts of ballpark figures are so important. And I always say, roughly putting out a book first time, I always say the rough number is about £1,500. So that allows a little bit of, push and pull, but most of that's going to be the editing. I'd say, a good 60% of that would be the editing cost, because it does naturally cost a lot more, but cover design is still a good chunk of that as well. But it is important to pay. So I think, finding that, that sort of tier system, whether it's your own tier system or someone's, like Clay's or like your own, Mark, I think is very, very important to understand what you get for your money. And where you can, I always recommend is pushing it as close to your maximum budget as possible, because at the end of the day, it's going to be so worth it,
I find that I have to kind of take the odd patience pill every now and then, because most indies I know, I would say the majority hit kind of a budget wall, and they go, oh, well, I didn't realize I couldn't have that picture of Martin Luther King on my biography of him without spending £400 on it, because they're owned by the state, all this stuff,
That's the problem.
So, but at some point during the brief, most independents realize that it does cost money, and be that by the quality of the response or the raw materials that I'm using, because some places I go don't have the quality of others, and I will say we're going there because it's economic. These are the disadvantages, these are the advantages, and then they'll see it and go, and then they'll go off to Magnum Photos at the other end of the scale and add 3 zeros to the price tag, and
I've seen a couple of
despite me warning them at the beginning. I do have a sample sheet that I send out which shows stuff I've used at a certain fee level, stuff that I've produced at another.
That's
and this is kind of blowing my own trumpet, but sometimes you can't tell what's cheap and what's not.
Yeah.
But I'm forever trying to find creative ways of sourcing imagery to compete with, market leaders who have twice the budget. So it's really case by case every time.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. But I think if we could just say roughly anywhere between sort of 350, maybe 750 would be a good.
So that's a really good ballpark.
Yeah. Cool, excellent. So one last question, because we touched on a few things. In fact, two last questions. Very, very quickly, though, because we are running out of time. And again, if you're listening, please do feel free to get your questions in on the right-hand side or via Twitter using the hashtag IndieNetwork. We'll answer those if we get a chance. Very, very quickly then, Mark. So in the editing world, you've obviously got a developmental or structural editor. You've got, let's say, a proofreader, and you've also got a copy or line editor. Whereas those three, disciplines, if you will, could be three separate people or one person, such as a designer could be. Do you find there's that sort of parallel? Because you've mentioned things like, graphic illustrators and graphic designers or design. Is there a line, or are there lines you can draw between these people?
Yeah, you can. There are very traditional labels that go with the disciplines, with sort of producing a cover. Art directors ask designers to design. Designers may then commission illustrators and photographers to produce material they bring together to produce a package. I myself commission quite a bit, but it's generally for the upper sort of fee scale. I spend my time buying in raw materials, things like typography, getting the paints out myself and producing sort of textures, getting my camera out. I mean, it's I'd say for each brief, you need to resource it properly. So if that means a particular aesthetic by a particular illustrator, we contract them to come in and produce an illustration for you, but they might not be typographers. So it's up to me then to produce an accompanying sort of typographic accompaniment to go with it. If you've ever opened a children's book where the illustrations are beautiful, but the typography is just sort of plonked on in black, that is a prime example of where these things meet. So the right source for the right job.
Good. I think that from that then, I mean, if we're going to be taking that into, let's say, we can't quite afford to do that. Let's say indie author just starting out with a small budget. Could we go direct to someone or maybe a couple of people so we get sort of a designer? Well, I tell you what I probably am asking is, should we seek individual people out like that, such as an illustrator, or should we find an all-rounder that can either find these things or be able to, take care of them themselves? Or
I mean, if you're confident in sort of managing supplies yourself to bring together in a cover design, brilliant. But I'm an art director as well as a designer. I know when someone else will do a better illustration than me,
of course,
for me, and we bring them in. It's I'm not a professional photographer, but I use a camera to bring in very basic moving blocks for a cover. I'd say brief to brief. It's up to you to kind of evaluate what you need, how it's done, get out there on the forums, ask people, and then you could put it out to tender. I mean, using platforms like Reedsy particularly, White Fox less so. You'll be able to sort of find 4 people whose work you like and get them to pitch for a job. Fine, there's a way to do it, but know thy brief, I would say, and then sort of add the right reason.
I can imagine you having that above your computer, or at least you wanting it above authors' computers.
Children and a bad decorating job.
Cool, excellent. We've got one last. No, I think just to recap on that point, I think that's really useful just to know, who to approach, because obviously spending a lot of time finding designers or finding illustrators and things like that, or just generally finding professionals. We authors find ourselves doing that quite a lot in the early stages. And even between, if you've done a couple of books and you're moving on to maybe 2, 3 or 4, whatever, you still find yourself doing it. Maybe if you want to change up the designer or get a new editor, you still
that's not bad.
Yeah, I think
by your vision, wouldn't you agree? I mean, I don't know how your covers have changed over time, but we talked earlier on about an author owning the process, coming to the table, taking an active role, but also balancing that with the right professionals. If you don't have and even an inkling how your book might look, or you're not convincible, don't bother. Have an opinion. It's essential. You know, even if it's wrong and it can be changed, have sort of a vision, a beginning. I like this person, I like that person, and have an instinct about it. Sometimes it's about the person that you meet. A lot of people have not liked my work, but have liked me, and I've been able to point them in the right direction for somebody else. You know, it's rare, but
yeah, that's really interesting. We've just got a question coming in from Anya Kimlin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So Anya said, I've got quite a dated cover design and one that is more trendy. My target audience and my team readers, they say it looks like Buffy for grown-ups, which is what the book is. Brilliant. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've missed the brackets there. For my team readers, keep choosing the dated one. Oh, sorry, I see. Getting confused here. So basically, yeah, they keep choosing the dated one, not so keen. What are your thoughts, Mark? You probably read that without getting my eyes and glasses.
I'd have to see around you. No, your English isn't bad, Anya. It's fine. I think Ben.
There we go.
Sorry, Ben, I barely know you, but I feel I can say this. I think it depends on your instinct for it, Anya. Really, I mean, if it's a more traditional design and it fits with the genre point we made earlier. If you're not looking to sort of push the envelope, if your audience is saying that's the one we want, maybe it's time to say yes. I mean, only you can balance all of these sort of factors, which is where taking the time to make that decision is important. Don't make a rash choice. Ask them all. Go with the majority. And if you disagree, if you wake up in the morning and go no, push the envelope and go, it's your cover. You know, go for the new one if you love it. They won't hate it. I mean, I bet the difference isn't huge.
No, I mean, you're not going to lose readers usually.
No, not at all. And if you reason it out, I mean, quoting Mark Dawson again, and I think most successful indies engage with their audience, discuss their covers, that kind of thing. And if you say to these people, this is why I've chosen it, my books are going in this direction, give them a reason rather than just, I think it's pretty. It's, I think engaging them in the process can actually empower them. You know? That's what the whole premise of Unbound. I mean, people pledge I pledge for lots of books and I get my name in the back. It's great.
Yeah.
And you get access to the author of what we call their shed, which is only you and the other people that have pledged, and you get to discuss the covers and you get to get involved in the process.
Yeah.
So, ask them.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's where we've seen obviously beta reading with the editing side and with the book side. I mean, beta reading is so popular now with readers and authors as a method of production, as well as just gauging or debt sounding a book. It's debt, sounding out a book. I think done with covers. I think that's why there's some really good advice. Yeah, ask some people, and I think the commercial viability of something always has to be checked. And if you do have choice A and choice B, and your entire fan base is on Facebook or on Twitter saying we like B, then you have to kind of wonder why they are choosing B, and therefore kind of lean towards it a bit, because they are your target audience. These are the people who are going to be waving money at the tills, digital or physical, buying the book. So you do have to take their opinion into
a commercial exercise, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The end of it.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I think we've come to the end of it. I'm just going to finish off with one quick fact from you, Mark, and that is, what is your personal favorite cover? It could be one that you've worked on, one that you just hold up there and a sort of, aura of...
always really.
Hard one.
People always ask me that. And one that I've done, or generally ever?
Ever. We'll go ever.
Oh, God.
I thought that'd be easier.
No, it's really not. I mean, I think the short answer is that I don't have one. I mean, every single cover I've designed has meant something different, taught me something different.
Okay.
And I've done pieces of work that have taken 5 minutes to do, and they've got all sorts of recognition.
Yeah.
There's work that I've spent months and months on, and they've not sold. It's a real cross section of stuff going on. I mean, there's loads of designers' work I love, but too many to mention. Yeah. The world is full of beautiful work, and for all your indies out there, have a look around. Look at the names, look at the design blogs. I mean, there's some absolutely stunning stuff out there. And I'm lucky enough to be included in some of the roundups, which is really humbling. But favorite cover, I can't do it because there's just so much great stuff.
Brilliant. No, I mean, I think that's good that you can't choose because of that exact reason, because there's so much out there. Have you got one that you've worked on personally that you always sort of mention? Are you always going to say that's one of my best works? Is there anyone that sticks
Well,
out?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to repackage Iain Banks a few years ago and do his last book, which you might be able to see on there, actually, just there.
Kennedy. Yeah.
Above. And I did his last book just before he died, and he found time whilst he was in the last few months of his life to write me a little message to say thank you for your designs, and
really
it
nice.
makes a huge difference. So I've also been lucky enough to repackage Alexander McCall Smith, all through big houses. And I met the guy recently after doing 15 books for him, and we were at a launch. He brought me up on stage and said to the audience, "This is the guy that does my covers." And
Amazing.
I landed that job when I'd first started out on my own, and I wasn't confident at all. And humbled that he is, that work just made my portfolio and meant so much more because of that. The execution of it is good, but it's by no means a £3,000 illustration. It just, what was off the page meant more than what was on. So
makes sense.
There's a few names I could drop there. I'm lucky enough to work on Roald Dahl, which is brilliant. But some of the more unknown work through Unbound. I mean, there's a breakthrough author called Paul Kingsnorth who did The Wake, which was Booker longlisted last year, and it came out of nowhere. And he's moved to Faber, and there's another one on the shelf there, right by my finger, it's called Beast, which got some attention in creative review, which was hugely humbling for a designer because to get a nod from your peers is amazing. So all of these jobs, they've got the best job in the world. It's wonderful.
It does sound really good. I don't know, writing and telling lies or dreaming up the covers. They are pretty, they're level, aren't they? I guess just being a creative is the best job in the world. So I think we could just
getting paid for your ideas coming into reality. It's nice.
Yeah, can't complain at all, can you? Good stuff.
No.
Well, listen, John. John never arrived. Mark. Well, I'm going to have to go check on John actually, just to make sure he's all right. So hopefully we'll have him on a later Indie Network. Unfortunately,
he's a wise owl, John. He knows what he's doing. And White Fox are excellent.
They really are, and I think we'll spend some time in a future Indie Network, either the next one or the one after that, to get John back on. So I'll go figure that out. But Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Like you said, we don't know each other very well, but it's been fascinating listening to your histories, your advice. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting in front of our authors.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for listening, and it's a great way to spend a Thursday night. Take care.
And that's it for last month's Indie Network. I hope you enjoyed it and found the advice useful. Now, don't forget, Indie Network is back every fourth Thursday of the month, which means we'll be back on the 25th of August. Hope to see you there, and you can catch all the information at www.shelfhelp.info. All right, take it easy. See you soon.